Um, just before this, actually, just before I started recording this, I had like the best shawarma of my life, and it got me thinking. I would probably last 5 hours as a UFC or MMA fighter because of the weight cut, like just the mental
Oh,
part of
dude,
it.
it's such a crazy thing, and it's funny because I was talking to the guys at MMA on Point yesterday about it. They were just we might do an episode on just like the different types of weight cuts and why they changed rules and this and that. And man, I can dive so deep into weight cuts, it goes ridiculous. Besides, cutting weight in high school and in college for wrestling, and the differences in that and like, a 5 day weight cut compared to, a fight you might have 2 months. If it's a last minute fight for me, like my debut for the UFC was 9 days. So I lost 26 pounds in 9 days. Some people have longer, some people have less. Look at Paul Felder against Dos Anjos. Like he had to
Yeah,
cut around the same amount of weight in a week. And the mentality, the dark side behind it, how like you look at Johnny Hendricks, probably a prime example. That guy has fought at the best of the best and even claimed the world championship at 170. Didn't It wasn't because he could make 170 that he stopped making it. Mentally he gave up. He was burnt out from cutting so much weight because he's been doing it all of his life. And wrestlers, especially myself, that I can attest to this, we all have eating disorders,
hmm
so it's like we're so used to making weight and then binge eating. Johnny would get up to like 220 cutting down to 170, and I'm just like, damn, man, because you can doesn't mean you should. And then years later, I'm doing the exact same thing, getting up 35 pounds above my weight class and then trying to cut down. It's like, all right, I'm a jackass.
yeah.
So it's the mental side, man, is so crazy.
It's interesting how you brought up eating disorders, and when I first think of eating disorders, what I only think about is like anorexia and people eating not enough. But obviously, there's the flip side of the coin, which I think a lot of people don't truly think of or truly appreciate, I guess, how prevalent it is binge eating. I got to imagine it's tough for an athlete when you go, I don't know how long the average weight cut is for you, but you go these weeks without eating the food you want to eat. And then all of a sudden it's like the horse being let out of the stable.
It's crazy because my manager, Lex McMahon, had this whole thing on UFC Fight Pass. He had his pro debut and just MMA debut in general as a heavyweight at 49 years old. So he just wanted to get in there just to see how it felt and how it is because he's a manager. He put so many fighters in the cage. He wants to know the feeling. So um, even though he's a heavyweight, he didn't have to cut weight, which I was super upset about. I was jealous. I'm like, damn it, I hate you heavyweights. He right after the fight was like, dude, I have a craving for everything sweet. I have a craving to like, I just want to binge eat. And I can just imagine the smaller guys who cut an enormous amount of weight to make 25, 35, and all the other weight classes that we usually cut weight for. He's like, man, I'm a heavyweight and I get to enjoy myself. And I'm still craving stuff after the fight. I can just imagine you guys possibly having to do, 2 month training camp where it involves the majority of it cutting weight. Like for me, like right now, I probably weigh about 157, so it's a little bit above 30 pounds above my weight class. It's about 32 pounds above my weight class.
Wow.
I had to cut 32 pounds just to make 125. So, and honestly, I'm not the only one that does it. Back in the day, I remember talking to John Dotson before he bumped up. I was like, hey, man, you're a little thick, like if you don't mind me asking, like, how much do you weigh? He goes, 160, 165. I'm like, there's no way you cut that much weight. He's like, yeah, I do it all the time. Like, this is just how I do it. And I'm like, all right. Then I go train with Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, I think 2 weeks before the fight, he's like, yeah, I weigh 153. That's awesome. I get to eat a little more. And I'm like, you fight 125. Like,
Right.
how do you do this? And then I don't know, years later, when I finally kind of thickened out and got, I guess, quote unquote, grown man strength, I'm just like, oh, damn, now I understand. Because I'm
Yeah.
like 23, 24 at the time, still kind of growing into my body now, being 28. I'm like, okay.
This is where
Yeah,
the
now I
tough
get it.
part comes. Yeah. For
Yeah.
you,
So it's a whole mental thing, man.
what would be if you could set up the ideal weight cut? I mean, obviously, I guess the ideal weight cut would be not having a weight cut, but irrespective of that, what would be the ideal weight cut for you, like time length wise, I guess?
Perspective of that, it's crazy because I work with my weight management specialist, nutrition, or Luis Giordano, and he's worked with some of the best, and they've all made weight with him, and then some of them have missed weight with him. But it's more on the mental side because it's crazy, and it's kind of upsetting, and it's kind of contradictory as well. As that like he's so good, if you listen to him to a T, you're gonna make weight. Look at Anthony Pettis when he fought Charles Oliveira in a 2 week. Lou got hired 2 weeks before the fight. Anthony Pettis was like 30 pounds above weight. He cut 30 pounds in 2 weeks, made the weight, and beat Charles Oliveira. He didn't look the best physically, but in a 2-week weight cut, like you're not going to look great.
Yeah.
And then you look at Johnny Hendricks when he fought Wonder Boy. Dude, Johnny Hendricks had a 6-pack. When the hell have you ever seen Johnny Hendricks with a 6-pack? And then after that, people like myself, I had my debut at 35 with him, made weight super easy. And then the next fight, I'm like, that was really easy. So I can kind of like cheat a little bit. I'm still going to make weight. And I still made weight, but my body just did not physically look as good. And the weight cut was harder because I was more thinking about like, I can enjoy myself, cheat a little bit because my nutritionist is awesome. Yeah. And then out of nowhere, I'm now struggling with weight because again, I'm too overconfident, kind of a jackass to myself. But his thing is like, we don't cut weight, we manage weight. And every single first time he's worked with somebody, they listen to a T because they kind of have no choice. They want to be able to trust the guy. So they put all the trust in them and they make weight like nothing. They're like, dude, that wasn't a problem at all. Then we all get overconfident, become jackasses, and then now we're cutting weight. My last fight, I ended up looking super lean. Like I posted a picture yesterday and he's like, when was this fight? I was like, it's the last fight, dude. He's like, you look good. I was like, yeah. Like trust me, I'm disappointed in myself right now. Like I looked good, you know? So, but that was down to a really strict diet and multiple weight cuts because my fight kept on getting postponed. So it was like, I was in a sense accidentally managing my weight instead of cutting weight. Like I'd get close to a fight 2 weeks before and then they're like, hey man, travel restrictions say Americans aren't allowed in this country. You're going to fight next month. So I'm like, all right, now I got a month and a half until I fight. So then I would kind of not binge eat, but enjoy myself a little bit, keep my weight low and then go back down. And then, hey, your fight got postponed again. It's like, oh, like even right now, I was kind of slimming down a little bit, even though these chubby chicks don't really say that. And then they're saying different countries aren't allowing Americans. So like both my opponent and I are American. It's like your fight keeps getting postponed. We're supposed to fight in December, didn't happen. Supposed to fight in January, didn't happen. So it's like me trying to manage my weight right now for that and trying to be comfortable is the best thing. So I think more of a lifestyle change is huge for all of us fighters. Right. The problem is no one teaches us at such a young age, and we grow up with the horrible, horrible habits of, the wrestling where we cut weight Monday through Friday, wrestle on Saturday, and then Sunday we get to binge eat, and then we repeat the process for 6 months. And then people wonder why we end up either having eating disorders or we end up being fatter than what we originally started when we, before we were even in the season, when we were unhealthy then too.
Mm-hmm. Man, so much to unpack there, but I think
much.
Two things that I guess to stick with. The first thing that came to my mind was when you were talking about a lot of the cancellations that really of fights and whatnot. Not only does it affect your weight cut, but it affects your training, your mental prep, whatever it is, right? That always kind of just makes me think about one of the things I really like to talk about in this podcast is controlling what you can control. And you can't control if a fight gets canceled or not, but you can control the things that you do, I guess, leading up to the fight.
And that's the hard part is that like I wouldn't say I'm barely starting to learn that now because that kind of got brought up to me earlier in the year when COVID started to be hit and all that stuff. Because I looked at it and I put the message across, I think it was yesterday, if not 2 days ago, of I've had 2 fights in 2 years and I'm 28 years old, but I haven't been injured. Why is that? The first year was more of like a mental warfare, mental battle on myself, self-sabotage, and that's why I've been promoting mental health. It's people get depressed, people get this, and you go through a lot of stuff behind the scenes. People don't really get to see. Obviously, I don't post everything on social media, even though I'm very open. And the second year is COVID, so it's like, especially this year, it's like, dude, I'm training my ass off, getting beat up every single day. My home base is Chicago. That's where my mother is, my brother, my family, and a lot of people that I take care of. But I train with Dean Thomas in Florida, so it's like I'm spending 2 months away from my family, making sure that I'm training, making sure I'm trying my best to stay focused and, kind of, besides sacrificing food, like food is food and I would love it, but I'm sacrificing time with people, relationships with friends, relationships with a possible significant other. I've lost a lot because of fighting. You have to make sacrifices. And that's how it is to accomplish your goals. And the problem is, COVID makes it that much harder because it's like, man, I'm training my ass off, but I don't get time to play. It's like you working all day, an 8-hour shift. At the end of the day, the guy's like, cool, maybe you'll get paid tomorrow. Come on back and find out. And it's like, all right, cool. I'll bust my butt tomorrow. Maybe you'll get paid tomorrow. Come on back. You'll find out. It's like, all right, man, this is kind of like Groundhog Day all over again. I'm getting beat up, but there's no reward for it. So that's the hardest part right now. It's kind of understanding like, hey man, don't be sad, don't be depressed, because this is stuff you can't control. Like,
Yeah.
sadly, it is what it is. Find different ways to hustle, make some money, find different ways to kind of somewhat stay productive. But if you can't fight right now, eventually you'll fight one day. Just might not be tomorrow.
Right, right. I for our episode here today, I went through your YouTube channel. I want to make sure I get the name right. Was it Shorty Team Official or something like that?
So my YouTube channel is Inside Team Shorty.
Inside Team Shorty, sorry. It was something with the Shorty team, or Team Shorty. But in this, I think in the description of that channel, you have that MMA just isn't about fighting. It's a lot more complex than that. And this is like really, really, I think, ringing true the behind the scenes stuff of MMA fighting, the weight
Mm-hmm.
cut, the sacrifices, the dedication, all of it. I think people, they watch a fight on UFC or Bellator, whatever it is, they just see two guys fighting and like they put that on a pedestal and they want to do that. But I think they sometimes lose sight of all the sacrifice and dedication that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and well, it's not even that they lose sight; they just don't get opportunity to see it. Like, that's one of the biggest reasons why boxing was so popular back in the day, especially with HBO, because they would do like a leading up to a fight, and they would put these hour specials up and show them on replay constantly, so everyone had a chance to see. And then people would watch Miguel Cotto versus Margarito. People would watch Manny Pacquiao versus whoever the hell, like there was reasons why boxing became so popular, even though it's not the entertaining sport today compared to MMA. I love boxing better. That's just how I am. But
Same.
like with boxing, especially with like Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez, they did like kind of an HBO special. Like, hey, I think it was Top Rank. They're like, we're gonna show the behind the scenes, a little bit of a grudge match, the type of training that Lomachenko does, the type of stuff that he's been doing his whole life. Teofimo, with all the adversity and him with his family, this and that. It's like, you saw the behind the scenes. The MMA, we don't really do that. We kind of just film fight week. We film a little bit of the weight cut, and then it's fight. And for example, people don't look at why certain people lose. Like, yeah, obviously, there's some days that people are just better than others, and there's some days that was gonna happen regardless of how the fight went. But then there's honestly some days that people aren't mentally there. Like when I lost Alex Perez, I can say whatever, and obviously the loss will never go away. But dude, I wanted to go home on Monday when I fought on Saturday. So it's like, I just want to go home. I don't care what happens. And there was a lot of mental things behind it. One of them being another last minute weight cut. It manipulates your mind and you don't perform your best. And I lost in my worst. But then you have some other guys, Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks was one of the best in the world. Went back to back with GSP, which I believe he beat him. Went against Carlos Condon and Robbie Lawler and all these different guys and put on great performances. But then you can tell mentally he just wasn't there anymore after he lost to Thompson.
Yeah.
He just didn't care. And after that, his career went to shit. And it's crazy how the whole mental side, the behind the scenes, isn't put out there. So my YouTube series, Inside Team Shorty, I bring you inside the team, and I let you guys know, like, this is the truth, the reality, and everything behind the scenes of the sport of MMA.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And just being about the mental piece, I mean, you can have all the physical ability in the world, but if your
Mm-hmm.
mental ability isn't there, you're not even going to get close to realizing that full potential. I always strive for a lot of the younger athletes that I try and coach or consult with on the side. I always try and strive for them to take like a 50-50 approach, like 50% focus on physical training, but also 50% focus on the mental training, especially at a young age, because that's when you're so impressionable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pick up bad habits real quickly and they kind of stay ingrained for you for long. Um, it's always fascinating to me why there's so little spotlight on the mental side of the game. I guess maybe because it's not as flashy, but I mean, its importance is second to none.
If it was flashing, my YouTube channel would be super popular right now.
Mine too. Mine too.
Yeah, and it's the fact that people like, and honestly, even me, like, why do you think Dragon Ball Z is so popular compared to a lot of honestly better anime storytelling anime? Is because no one cares about the story. No one
Yeah.
cares about who did this and why they caused this or whatever the case may be. Like, I watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, easily the best anime I've ever seen, and an amazing story. A great action, but even better story, and it got me, thrilled with it. But I know people who watched the first episode, they're like, I like the action better in DBZ. It's like, that's not the point of this anime. This is a story-based anime that builds with action later on, but it's the same thing with the mental side and the physicality of anything. It's like, why are Why do people read books with pictures? Like,
Mm.
you're supposed to read a book because of the text. Like, yeah, pictures help, and pictures catches, people's attention, and that's why those books are a little more popular. That's why comic books are somehow still around,
Mhm.
because people want to see the pictures, they want to see the art, they want to see the action compared to just reading. Like, honestly, I can read 20 books that I have, but I don't want to. Why? Because nothing else is catching my attention. I'm reading, in a sense, words the entire time, and I'd rather have it be told to me. I'd rather actually see it in a movie instead of reading the book.
Yeah, man. I mean, I recommend anybody to go check out YouTube channels. I think you do a really good job of showing behind the scenes and the mental prep and
Thank you.
everything that goes along with that. When did the mental side of sports, and I guess more specifically fighting, really start to be a focus for you? Was there a specific match or a specific
Um,
time in your life where it really kind of started to have that importance?
honestly, it's crazy because, again, I'm very open with this. UFC really treated me like crap, and with my resume that I had, I was like, okay, I'm not going to say it's going to be really fast for me to get into UFC, but I'm going to have their eyes on me. My third pro fight in Titan and third pro fight overall was a co-main event for Titan. I won the interim belt because Tim Elliott was fighting DJ, or he was in the Ultimate Fighter House at the time. So I won the belt. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm 3-0. I'm already a world champion. Great. Now I'm going to defend it. I was like, well, I'm going to fight the best of the best. Let me fight 18-2 Pedro Nobre, knocked him out in 86 seconds, a UFC vet. And the UFC at the time was kind of belittling the flyweights. And I'm thinking maybe if I get knockouts, I'm going to be right up there. I just had 2 straight knockouts, and one finished my first fight, and the second fight went the distance. So I got 3 finishes and one, went the distance, but an ass kicking. So I'm like, all right, I got a little chip on my shoulder. Like, you did well, but we want to see you come from adversity. I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay, cool. Like, Cody Garbrandt was knocking out everyone in the bantamweight division. I could be the next Cody Garbrandt. And they're like, no, we want to see you come back from adversity. So the next fight, I decide to bump up to fight at 35. I break my hand, get dropped, get stuck in the guillotine, get out. I have 12 stitches over my eye, and I tear my MCL. I win the fight 4 rounds later by a unanimous decision with all of that in the first round. And they're like, cool, good job. I was like, dude, I just came back from adversity like you wanted, all in the first round. And I won the next 4 rounds, like, indecisively. And they're like, or excuse me, decisively. And they're like, cool. I was just like, all right, then I'm just now getting depressed. Like, now the sport's not getting fun. I have to do extra stuff. I do extra work to get these eyes on me, which if I was any other weight class, like for example, Conor McGregor at lightweight or featherweight at the time, 14-2, captures 2 championships for Cage Warriors, but never defended a belt. I did it at 5-0 and defended a belt in the process against guys who were way more touted or highly touted than the guys he beat. So I'm like, come on, man, like, I'm trying to get some hype here. And this is when Conor McGregor was slowly rising to the top. And then I defend the belt at 35, which again was never done. Defended it, won. They're like, we'll see what happens. And it's like, what the hell? So I kept on getting last minute calls by the UFC, like 7-day notice. But it's like, dude, I have a broken hand. Dude, I have a torn MCL. Hey, I literally just fought last week. The doctor says I'm still concussed. Like, give me a break. So I was treated very unfairly. And by the time I made it to the UFC, I never got time to enjoy it. I had a 9-day notice, 26 pounds. And then 20 days after that, I had another 20-day weight cut to do a fight. So in about 50 days, I lost 54 pounds. And so, again, by the time I finally lost Alex Perez, I was on a 34 fight winning streak from amateur to pro. And I lose. Cool. I lose one. I think I'm going to go 3-1 in the UFC. Let me have 2 more fights and see where it goes. And they didn't care. So I was like, all right, well, if I'm not going to fight to the end of the year, let me do my thing. And I'm kind of noticing I'm depressed. Like, I'm just not happy. I'm not having fun with the sport. I'm having an awesome time training, but I'm not, like, performing the way I want. And I'm like, huh. Dude, I've had fights where I'm literally getting my ass kicked, but I'm still smiling. I'm still having fun. I'm like, oh, man, this is a challenge. But then I ended up losing Alex Perez, and I started to really notice how depressed I was, like how dark it was. Like, I didn't care that I lost. That's going to happen in the sport. You walk long enough, eventually your feet are going to hurt. Eventually you're going to trip. It was the fact that I lost my worst, not because I was injured, because I just mentally didn't care. I was like, man, I'm not having fun. That's my motivation. It's like, why do you join a sport as a kid? Because it's fun. Why do you stop doing it? Because it's not fun anymore. So I'm like, I kind of almost want to quit. And then I started making mental videos for myself, trying to help people with insights from Shorty. And then one of them was a video about DJ being traded to ONE FC. And mine was just an accusation. I was like, man, I think the UFC is probably going to cut the flyweight division. Like, I just don't see them investing time in us, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, you're right. You're a cut. I'm like, oh. And then after that, that's when the depression really hit because it's like, dude, I worked my ass off to get to the UFC, to get to my NFL, my NBA, my NHL, all that stuff. And then I have the resume that no one's ever had before entering the UFC, and you release me like that because you just don't care about me. And it's like, why is everyone else being treated better? Well, it's because I was a flyweight. And sadly, it's one of those things where it's like you can't control what you can't control. It is what it is, and it's honestly business over anything personal. I took it extremely personally. I still do today.
It's
And
hard not to take it personal, I think, because you invested so much into the process that for it to be
yeah,
kind of snatched under you, it's like any
well,
human will look at it the way that you did, I think.
and it also cripples my it cripples my record, obviously, but it makes me look bad because people don't really at the time never really paid attention too much to UFC Fight Pass. They were still kind of building, and then obviously you watch UFC, everyone watches UFC. So when I lost, it's like, damn, you lost in front of the world, you got knocked down in front of the world, and obviously that highlight continues playing and all that stuff, which again, it is what it is, but it's like the world saw the worst of me compared to what I want them to see. Again, I don't care about losing, but I'd rather losing my best than not caring and then losing on my worst. And then obviously I care about the fact after. And it's like, oh man, I was so mentally broken at the time. So at that, once I got to Brave, I was like, dude, I need to hire a mental coach. Like I need help. I need mental help because it becomes a problem. And I've worked with a handful of people. Right now I'm working with Andy Murphy, and he's my mindset coach. Every once in a while we'll have meetings, but my whole team in general, like even with Dean Thomas, just changing my atmosphere from going to American Top Team to just literally Dean Thomas, Jillian Robertson, whoever he allows to come into the house. Like it's such a more positive atmosphere. Like we put our bodies through pain every single day, and we'll push through it, no problem. But if we have no motivation, you're not going to want to do it anymore.
By hiring a mental coach, was there anything like that took you by surprise from a mental approach of what maybe he asked you to do? Like, what were kind of the biggest changes, I guess, with your approach to fighting after kind of
You know,
getting
it's
educated by the mental side of things?
it's crazy because it's honestly they as mental coaches, they just see things in a different perspective. So you have so many people, especially the Gen Z generation, given I'm a millennial, the Gen Z generation, all they see is what's online. All they see is depression. All they suffer is from anxiety. Like millennials right now are actually at the highest rate for suicide. Like we are so mentally like broken, it's ridiculous. I have no clue why. But you look at all the things you see on social media, you look at all the things that are happening, especially today, COVID, people stuck in their house. Me, I'm an extrovert. So if I can't go out, I'm getting depressed. If I don't have someone here with me, I'm lonely. I'm getting really, really sad. So it's the fact of trying to look at things from a different perspective. So like you were saying, you can't control certain things. It's like, oh, I'm training, but I can't fight. But that's not your fault. If you were injured, maybe you could have done something to prevent it, stretched more, maybe rested a little more. You're not injured. It's the world who's injured. And it's sadly the things that you're going to have to deal with like everyone else. And to know that you're not alone in the situation. So honestly, with the mental coach, it's more just a point of view of that the cup is half full instead of half empty.
Yeah. And talking to a lot of athletes that have mental coaches, being kind of one myself, speaking to a lot of younger athletes, one thing
Mm-hmm.
that really took me by surprise, I think, with the younger athletes at least, is they have a perspective when it comes to the mental side of the game that the pro athletes are perfect and like they're on the
Mm-hmm.
ball mentally there 100% of the time. I think it was episode 6 that I watched from your YouTube channel when you're on the treadmill running. I guess that was your hotel
Oh
gym.
yeah, my training camp. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you talked about how like everyone's gonna have mental struggles, no matter if you're a pro athlete or I don't know, you work at a grocery store. Like you're gonna have mental
Mm-hmm.
struggles, and you're not gonna be there every day. I think talking to a lot of younger athletes, that was one of the more mind-opening sessions that I could have with one of them. Is showing them and walking them through how everybody has mental struggles. The guys that you see on TV, they may look perfect, but like we talked about earlier, you don't see the behind the scenes and the struggles that they
Yeah.
go through like that.
It's I like to put things in the light because I've always wanted to be a big brother. Sadly, out of all four of us, I'm the youngest one, and I found out I had two half sisters like 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm still the youngest one.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I've always wanted to be a father, big brother. I don't think I'm a father right now. I deny a lot of calls, but we'll see. It's the fact of Yo, man, a lot of people, and especially the athletes that I work with, because I sponsor athletes, they're like, "Oh, dude, but you're so much better than me." It's like, if you watched any of the film from any of my first fights, I lost every single first match. I lost my first wrestling match, my first kickboxing, my first MMA fight, my first everything. And then out of nowhere, the next year I come back even better and I dominate. Like I lost. A quick story about me is I lost my first amateur fight, and then I went 25 straight with multiple national championships and then 2 world championships, and then multiple things in between that from wrestling, the Muay Thai, kickboxing, all that stuff. I was never good at anything. Maybe I was probably better than some people, but I was never the best, especially at my size. I played football, I played baseball, I played all these different sports. I was never that kid in the very beginning going, I'm going to be the best or I'm always better than everybody. Dude, I sucked. In football, it took me years to finally get the courage to actually hit someone, to finally try to tackle the biggest dude in the room or on the field. Um, it was just like that in fighting. Me now, I've kind of changed my perception. I've kind of gotten myself a Napoleon complex. Where I'm like, you know what? I kind of do that whole prison thing. It's like I'm gonna find the biggest dude in the yard and beat him up and drop him, and then people are gonna respect me. So for me, I think that's why I have so many heavyweight friends because I'm always trying to bully them like Curtis Blades, but and Greg Hardy and all those guys. But they're gonna kill me when he says. But it's the fact of you have to believe in yourself. And my coach in high school would always tell me, it's like, man, every time you put your mind on something, you actually did it. I can tell you, even with just grades, like you don't. I never thought I was the smartest kid. I graduated high school as literally the voted biggest party animal. Like my grades were a 2.0 all the way through. I think actually a 1.8 my senior year. So that's 1D.
Yeah.
And
Which back then, probably being the biggest party animal, you probably embraced that at that
oh yeah,
age.
dude, I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved it. I was as energetic as my sweater right now. Like, I was like, so I ended up going to college, and my first test I failed. I'm like, oh damn, this is serious. Like I actually have to try. And I was like, all right, you know what, man, I really don't want to join the military. I really don't want to like work at the pizzeria I was working at. So let me really focus on the books and try and see how this goes. First semester, I get my first ever 3.0 in college, and just first ever 3.0 in my whole life. And I'm like, hmm, okay, next semester, I just keep on doing the same thing. Next semester, I get 3.3. The following semester, 3.6. My last semester, 3.8. And by the time I graduated overall GPA of 3.8, 5 theta kappa, national honor society. I'm like, holy crap, I was actually smart. And it wasn't that I was dumb in the first place. It's that I just didn't try. Because for some reason, I thought it was awesome to be sad. I thought it was awesome not to care about books. I thought it was awesome to do. It's crazy how like our world is flipped upside down. Like it's actually an awesome thing to be smart, but for some reason we play dumb because that's what people want to see. They want to see the bad boy. They want to see the
Yeah.
bad kid. And yeah, it's like, dude, man, I'm so happy I actually studied, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't try. So I'm like, once you actually try, yeah, you might lose the first time. Like I failed my first test and lost my first fight, but you never know until you keep on walking. You got to have the mindset to do so and courage to really believe in yourself.
I think how you're talking there about smart and how it's, not the focus, I guess, where people want to achieve. I kind of relate to the mental side of the game where it's not the flashy thing. Like the partying is flashy, and that's what people want to get good at right at that age.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny how what's not always the flashy, like what's the flashiest isn't always the most important. You can see it in any analogy in life, but it's kind of those things that are the behind the scenes that are the
Yeah,
most
man.
important.
It's just crazy how people belittle the journey. They always just see the guys on top, and it's like, you know where they started, right? I actually just watched a documentary on GSP today and his lead up to the UFC and making his debut, I believe at 5-0 and all that stuff, and then he loses twice. But he didn't give up. He's like, I could beat these guys. I didn't perform my best, and out of nowhere works his way up to get that rematch and beats both of those guys, Matt Sitter and Matt Hughes, and it's like, dude, he tried. And then he ended up being one of the best in UFC history. It's the same thing with DJ. Like, DJ's not perfect. But then when he finally found the right weight class and finally found the right style he wanted to implement in his game, he became the best reigning, UFC champion in his history. So it's like, you look at all these fighters, I guess besides Khabib and Floyd Mayweather, everyone else has lost a fight. Anderson Silva, one of the best in the world, has lost multiple fights, even before he was in the UFC and even before he was UFC champion. He even got knocked out. So it's a fact of, people always go like, oh, you need to be a Floyd Mayweather and undefeated. You need to be Khabib and maul people. It's like, not everyone fights like that. And in this journey, again, you look at NFL as a good analogy. It's like you have 16 games a season generally, besides COVID. You have 16 games a season. Not every team goes undefeated. Actually, I think almost every year, maybe one team goes undefeated. But because they lost doesn't mean you're like, all right, instead of the Bears, I'm gonna go for the Patriots now. It's like, no, dude, you still go for your team. Like that's just how
Yeah.
it is. But they can still win the championship at the end. Even as a wild card, you can still win the championship at the end. Matt Serra never even thought he would win a UFC championship, and then he knocks out GSP. No one thought he was gonna win a UFC championship, and then he, drops GSP and knocks him out, and he wins the belt. And it's like, dude, you never know what's gonna happen until you actually try. Hell, fuck it, close your eyes and throw the punch. You never know until it lands.
I think too, that journey that is filled with adversity makes the victories that much sweeter. I'm sure for you yourself, going through all the adversity you have in your MMA career, it makes those victories that much sweeter than somebody just coming up to you and handing victories on a silver platter. I think, at least for me, speaking just
Oh
for
yeah,
myself, of course, that when I go through adversity in sports and then I end up winning or overcoming it, feels 10 times better than kind of being given a free pass.
it's like, I'm trying to think of good analogies, but honestly, nothing in life worth having comes easy. I forgot who said that, anonymous quote, but I'm stealing it. But it's the fact of, it's true. Everyone likes a challenge. No one likes anything to come right at the pedestal. Like, yeah, cool, there's certain things you might enjoy, but when it comes to accomplishments, you look at Usain Bolt, you look at, Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, all these guys who come from extreme adversity, and look what they're at today. Like, do you think they would be happier if they grew up automatically rich? I don't even think they would have needed that sport. What's the point? A lot of us, especially athletes and extremely fighters, fighting's a poor man's sport. Like even when slavery was huge in different countries, not just blacks but Latinos and Asians and all these different countries, they would literally go, man, this guy's athletic. We're gonna have these two fight together, and the winner is gonna get more food. The winner is gonna actually get money. And the winner is gonna have more freedom, or whatever the case may be. Like they treated these people better, and that was their way up. That was their way out. So for me, I always say I'm another shorty out of the neighborhood,
Yeah.
trying to make it out of the neighborhood. Like that's really what it is. Fighting for me, like I didn't grow up rich. My mom is still middle class. My dad was definitely low class. My mom started off low class as well. She just worked her way up to middle class. For me, I started with nothing and now I worked my way up to semi middle class. I still treat myself like I'm broke every single day, but and my brother's my biggest freeloader, so I am kind of broke. But it's a fact of, man, it's I rather have grown up poor and became a fighter and pushed through to make it to this point than go, you know what, I have money, I'm just going to fight to see if I like it. It's like, no, man, I fought for a reason, to get out of the neighborhood and hopefully inspire other people to just try to accomplish their goals too, and show that if you actually try, you can make it up. It doesn't mean because you started here you're going to stay here. And that's what a lot of people, especially youngins today, think about. That they look at the stars and they're like, I'm never going to get that high. It's like, how do you think the stars got up there in the first place? They started here. Most of them started here.
Yeah. I think that motivation you get, like you said, fighting to get out of a neighborhood, you
Mhm.
can't replicate that if you don't grow up in that environment. I think it takes living through the experiences that you and other fighters did to give you that motivation. I mean, it just kind of blows my mind. Not blows my mind. Maybe makes me chuckle is a better expression to use. These kind of celebrity fights that are going on right now, and how they're kind of like hyping up everything. I don't, I don't really see the same motivation in those guys that I see in somebody like you, for example, or other people that kind of have those adversity-filled upbringings. And I think it just does something to the brain where it kind of puts it in a certain mode that when you get in that ring, you're able to perform in a certain level.
It's it's the fact of, like, you look at Nate Robinson, a huge example because of these celebrity fights. Nate Robinson is a phenomenal basketball player and came up from nothing, and worked his way up to make millions of dollars and be an all-star, be this, be that, like amazing person, amazing human being. And then he decided to do the celebrity death match thing, which I think this is kind of like the closest thing we can have to celebrity death matches, which I don't completely disagree with, because honestly, it was pretty damn entertaining.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you have rich people, you have people who are already at the point where they don't need any money. And from what I hear, I don't believe Nate Robinson's check was going to charity. I could be horribly wrong. But the fact of, if he was doing it for charity, sure, cool, do it. And you might have a better performance from it. But if you're just doing it to do it, man, there's no real drive. There's no real motivation just to see, besides just the fact of seeing if you can do it. It's like me right now going, I want to see if I could be a race car driver, and I just jump in some amazingly fast race car and then I crash. It's like, no, that's I have no motivation to do that. I fight because this was my way of the neighborhood, and even still today, it's like I fight to get back to the top of the top, to claim 2 belts and Brave, and then see where my life goes from there. So I still have goals, but if you don't have goals for whatever reason, then what's the point? I think goals are probably the biggest thing that I had to find in myself, that to make it valuable. It's like, if you don't have goals, then why are you running this trail? There's no reward for you at the end besides that goal. So if there's no goal, why are you here? Go somewhere else and try to accomplish something else.
Yeah, man. Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think goal setting is so important, not only for athletes, but I think people in general, as people navigate their life and they go through school or their jobs or their relationships, whatever it is. I think a lot of people could see a lot of benefit from having not only daily goals, things you want to accomplish on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, and long-term goals. It kind of keeps you on track and keeps you accountable as well, because you don't want to let
You have to
yourself
stay
down. And
productive.
you don't want to let other people down either.
It's funny because, again, as we kind of get back to like the depression age right now, where everyone's like, oh, this, oh, that. Like, honestly, I have my moments too. So I
Yeah.
can't like say like, oh, I'm the best. Like, trust me, I have my sad moments too. But it's the fact of like, there'll be days where, like, today, super busy. Tomorrow, super busy. But it's a good thing. I'd rather be busy than literally being at home and doing nothing. And being busy means I'm actually working towards something. I'm not doing this horrendous labor like some people in my family. Like, I could complain about my life every single day, but then you turn the table and look at other people in my family, like, dude, I would kill to be in your spot right now. I would kill to be as busy as you instead of doing what I'm doing every single day. So again, it's the perspective of life. Like, I could, again, complain about my life every single day. I don't have time to do this. Oh, sacrificing this, sacrificing that. But there's always an upside. You just actually have to look at it and to accept it instead of, always being so damn negative, which most of us tend to be, especially in music, social media, the news, the media, whatever the case may be.
For a lot of the younger athletes out there that might listen to this, and they're struggling with their mental side of their game in sports, whatever reason, could be anxiety of performing in front of other people, could be afraid of losing, could be just not motivated, not having fun. What's kind of you think would be a good advice to give them as like the first step to correcting their mental game?
For me, if you're a young kid that has obviously opportunity to do whatever you want, and I really do mean this. Now, obviously, people see things for different reasons. I've always been driven by fun, especially as a child. If it's not fun, why the hell are you doing it? Like, it's serious. There's no reason to do it if it's not fun. If it's especially an extracurricular activity that you chose to put yourself in, that no one's forcing you to stay in, then why are you doing it if it's not fun? So I think that's the first thing to look at is, if you're having fun, all right, let's push through. Okay, let's say maybe you're not just that good at it. All right, well, how long you've been doing it compared to other people? Maybe you just have time to catch up, but it doesn't mean you can't catch up. So it's the fact of actually trying to motivate yourself to get to that point and kind of creating, like you said, daily goals. For me, with sparring, for example, or even practice, I tell people, like, most fighters spar about 2 to 3 times a week. Depends on who you are, the gym you're at, and yada yada yada. Me, if I spar 2 times a week, I go in there with 3 goals. I go, all right, the last sparring session, I was getting jabbed a lot. That means maybe I should move my head a little more. All right, cool. I got to move my head. All right. The next thing, my next goal is, I need to throw more leg kicks. I need to be more active with my feet. So they're just throwing hands. I need to throw more leg kicks and kind of be a kickboxer instead of a boxer. Cool. Move my head and now throw more leg kicks. All right, third one, maybe every once in a while fake a shot. And if I get the shot, awesome. It just kind of, change levels. All right, cool. Be different. Change levels. That's the third goal. Now, if I can accomplish all 3 in the sparring session, awesome.
Yep.
If I can't, let's say I check down 2, then I have 1 left. then in that sparring session, there's always going to be something to work on. So you got to think of two more things that you need to work on for the next sparring session, and now you have three again. So there's always three cycling your head as a constant reminder instead of you going to practice and going, I'm just going to try my best to beat up everybody. Especially if you're the best in the room, you need to create different goals to encourage yourself to try harder in practice. All right, man, I easily beat this guy up on the feet. All right, let me try to implement some takedowns. Let me work on my takedowns and transitions and faking and doing this. So it's, again, you have to create goals. But if you just go into practice, you're probably gonna get that much better, and it's just gonna plateau. But you start creating goals. Cool, these goals are now being accomplished, and you're slowly rising up. Yeah, you'll have those days, but then you slowly go back up compared to just staying here the entire time.
Yeah. I like the saying for athletes that if you don't find anything to work on, you're not looking hard enough. And I think even just setting those goals is a win. No matter if you achieve 1, 2, or 3 of them, just having that mindset of something to work on and practice, making that practice, I guess, as valuable as you can make it. I think that's already a huge W for any athlete out there.
You have to, the biggest thing is you have to try. And if you really want to do this, you're going to try. If you really don't want to do this, you're going to find reasons to quit for many different things. You're going to find reasons not to stretch. You're going to find reasons to complain. You're going to find reasons for whatever the case may be to keep on bringing yourself down. So if you're having fun, push through. You'll find it. I always tell people, if you're motivated, you'll do it. If you're motivated, you'll do anything. And I can tell you this, from looking back at my wrestling career in college and all this stuff I did to get the full ride, to graduate and be a national champ and be a world champ in MMA and all that stuff. It's like, I look at that stuff today and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? I have no clue how I did that. And then I started looking at it, I was like, it's not even the physicality. Like, you could always, a lot of people can do what you do, but it's the reasons behind why they do it. And that's what you got to find, that motivation. And I was like, if I had to do the same exact stuff I did in college, dude, I look at myself and I think I'm crazy right now. I think it's the dumbest thing I did in the world. But at that time, I was so motivated that it didn't matter what I had to do. I was going to get it done. And I did. Yeah. So it's motivation that will make you do lots of things.
I think that's a beautiful point to end this interview off on, man. I appreciate you coming on. And of course, I encourage everybody to check out Inside Team Shorty on YouTube to follow your
I really appreciate
your camp series there, because I think you're doing a really cool job there of the behind the scenes and the mental prep and the mental sacrifice and dedication and commitment that goes behind being a professional MMA fighter.
I'm trying my best. I actually been wanting to make more videos, but I make them off my phone, and sadly my phone storage is super full right now. Yeah. So I'm waiting for a new phone, but
new episode soon.
Yeah, no, definitely a new episode when it comes to the training camp. I want to do more mental videos coming up, but if people want to support, man, one of the things I've been doing is I have my own foundation, Team Shorty Foundation, all on social media, from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and my website, teamshorty.com. 100% of the proceeds go to this foundation. There is also a donation button on there if people want to help. I help keep kids, teens, and young adults inside the gym and off the streets, and also do donations where I'm donating meals to families. I'm donating sports gear to kids in need. So if you guys ever want to help, teamshorty.com and just overall the Team Shorty Foundation, I really appreciate all love support. And that's why I say we can, we will. Together we are Team Shorty.
That's dope, man. I'll plug those links in the description of this video to get people to easy access to that if they want to contribute.
Well, cheers, man. I appreciate it.